I'm ready for this. I've been prepping. Yep, I've been listening to a ton of Midwest emo music. I got obsessed with two men writing poetry about each other this week. It's been
One
good.
of them's a little bit better
ready.
of a poet than the other, in my opinion.
We stand Rick Ross here.
I mean,
Wonderful.
yes, but
No, but this is a fun month. It's sex, consent, and romance month.
I've lovingly called it Fuck Month.
Hell yeah, fuck month. We're not.
Fuck month.
YouTube is gonna demonetize us already because we swore in the first 10 minutes. Hell yeah.
I thought it was 10
shit.
seconds.
Either way, probably.
I mean, we're probably gonna
We
get
have that
demonetized.
30-second intro though, so it saves us every time. I didn't think about that till now.
Oh my god.
Big up to Paralyze.
Thanks, man.
You guys have saved us so many dollary dues.
Saving the day.
We don't actually make money on
money on
YouTube, but at
YouTube.
least we won't be hidden from the algorithm.
Yay! People can't see you, Flex Hunter. This is an audio-based
That's
medium.
fine.
They can feel him flex, though.
You can.
Ugh.
Because hi and welcome to Blank Bodies, a Vampire the Masquerade tabletop horror and romance podcast. I'm your host, Hunter, and I'm joined by...
You know, sometimes romance is the true horror of the world.
I thought you were about to say sometimes Romans are the true
mean,
horror.
that's
That's
also
true.
true.
That is also
Sometimes.
historically accurate.
I'm John.
Yeah, and speaking of historically accurate, we have...
Sarah,
That
that
is
is a lot of effort to put on me as somebody who is a failed history major.
Well, you're just a historically accurate Sarah.
Also,
Yeah,
one of
that's
us
fair.
has to kind of be, and I don't...
Yes.
Looking at the room, I
I
feel like...
we're gonna go with the bitch with the shaved eyebrows. Hell yeah. Let's go. Anyways, so we're shifting from baby's first awoo with the werewolf series. Thank you, Hunter, for handling that. And we're now continuing our consent series. Ba-ba-da-da.
Consent.
So we're going to be talking about unethical content at the table and bleed.
Yeah, so if you take last month and this month and our intro to Vampire Month, you're ready to run your own underworld.
Quite literally.
After this, you'll be prepped.
You just got to do a lot of crunches because you got to get those like fucking Michael Sheen abs.
Yeah.
He got yoked for that for reasons.
Big old muscles.
The secret's body fat. Everyone's got abs.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta get it down to where you can see
This
them.
fitness journey that you've been on, it's doing wonderful things for you, I'm assuming overall, but I'm worried about your obsessions and where this will take you.
Yeah, I've lost 35 pounds so far.
Good
I've
job.
started lifting.
Hell yeah.
There is a physical therapist living in the house now.
Damn.
He's just
What?
a guest. He's my buddy. We're visiting for the weekend from out of state, but
Oh,
there
okay.
is a physical therapist
thought there
living
was,
in the
like-
house.
I thought there was like a tertiary being that I somehow missed.
Me too.
Just
Unfortunately,
somewhere in like slutty daddy shorts, just like bicep curls, and I just missed this entirely.
Unfortunately, we don't quite make enough on Patreon for me to have a live-in health coach. But
Yeah.
if you want to join us over on Patreon, you get exclusive episodes. And once we do 500, we'll do a whole episode about milk.
It's
Yeah,
true.
which is
And 4 episodes a month. We're going to tell you about that later, though.
yeah. So
Got excited.
So consent part 4, unethical content. We're going to talk about what it is it safe to even use, and how to manage it responsibly. Huzzah! And then with bleed, we're going to talk about what it is, how to manage it, and a little bit of review on the bleed material published so far for 5th edition.
I mean, usually you just need to, like, clean it out, apply pressure.
Yeah,
We're
We're
alcohol,
going to be fine.
I was going to say,
cotton swabs.
I switched-
Sometimes in really bad situations, you might, like, use a belt to apply a tourniquet.
Oh, yeah. Dude, fucking, what, I forget the name of the brand. There's, like, a really good, like, tourniquet that you can just, like, have as your, like, everyday carry.
Oh, yeah. They're
Yeah.
just, like, tubes and they twist and then lock into
Yeah, and
place.
then it locks it in and has, like, a thing so you can, like, write the time and all that. Like, I don't like that I live in a day and age where I'm considering getting a tourniquet as part of my everyday carry, but, you know.
It's not a bad
It's not
idea.
a terrible thing. Anywho, so content warning, we're going to be talking about unsafe and morally dubious situations in gaming, so if that gives you the squick, you're aware now.
All right.
Hell yeah. So, sources will be the books Beyond Choices and the Ethics of Computer Games by Miguel Sicart. Also going to be talking about the Bloodstained Love book, the V5 Player's Guide, and Consider to Play section of the V5 Core book. So, woohoo.
Woo. Ooh.
So, unethical content, what the fuck is it? The best way to boil it down is simulation of actions that outside of the simulated game world we deem ethically despicable.
That's just vampire.
Yes. That is a little quote from the Ethics of Computer Games on page 191 if anybody wants to read further on that.
I do like computer games.
Hell
I might
yeah.
give that a read.
Yeah, these books do focus more on computer games, but there's pretty much a direct correlation between the way that computer games are designed and TTRPGs, so I'm just kind of lifting and plopping it over here for our purposes. But yeah, so for those that might still be confused, like think a lot of the actions that you do in like Grand Theft Auto are basically all of World of Darkness, where things are like you're doing things in games where you're just like, if I saw somebody actually doing this, I would think they were bad and icky and not want to be friends. But because it's a game, whatever.
I don't know. One of my favorite things in Grand Theft Auto is just getting a car, driving it out in the country, and seeing how far I can launch it off a cliff.
Oh. That could or couldn't be unethical.
I guess if I stole the car.
If you stole the car, if there was still another person in the car when you launched it off the cliff, if there might be people where the car is launching.
Is the cliff in a like protected habitat and you're just destroying the ecology of like endangered species?
It's right out of San Andreas. I doubt anything near San Andreas is a protected environment.
I don't know, man. There's like some rare, lizards or something.
Rare lizards or something, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Anyway.
That's the rough of that. Why is this seen as a problem? Well, there are lots of folks that find games of various types to be tools of teaching bad morals through their simulations. The Tipper Gore-esque thing we have been dealing with for decades in music and other media, where people just go, this is bad, so therefore if you engage with this material, you are also bad. The best example of this, particularly for TTRPGs, is all of the satanic panic around Dungeons & Dragons, where people it's not a meme, guys, people legitimately thought that Dungeons & Dragons was teaching you real witchcraft and letting you converse with the devil.
Same with Pokemon.
Yeah, that got transferred to Pokemon and then Harry Potter and...
Harry Potter is evil, though.
Oh,
so.
yeah, fuck turfs.
Not just that, like, we can go back to persecuting Harry Potter and the characters.
Yeah. Oh, just being like, oh, I'm sorry, your protagonist decided to become a cop and the entire society is like built on a bedrock of racism and it's tons of problems. We're not that podcast at this moment.
Wait for Mage.
Oh my god.
Wait for Mage! It's coming. But yeah, there's also the outrage all of us have had to deal with people freaking out over the Grand Theft Auto series and various other video games that are infamous for violence. Yeah, Mortal Kombat. And there's like, think of the children. This is teaching them bad things. Or the current thing now we're dealing with where people are like, Bluey's gonna teach our kids to be gay. It's evil. And I'm like, what the fuck did Bluey do? Like, it gets absurd. So, but this is based on a form of virtue ethics where one's morality is directly tied into practicing good morals. So if you behave good, ergo you are equal to good. So if you engage with things that are deemed bad due to transitive property, you are also bad.
I'm one bad boy.
That's because you've been walking around with a baby sledgehammer covered in vinegar.
It's true. It smells like iron and vinegar.
It does.
You smell like vinegar, yeah.
I smell like vinegar?
Just a little bit. It's not a bad smell.
It's on my hands. It's from the hammer.
If people ask, I would just say you like pickles.
I like to tell them the whole story.
That's fair.
And by the whole story, I mean from the very beginning.
Before he... Let him do that in his head. As he looks glazed over into the distance.
Yeah, well, John's glazing himself. So, for those who are not aware, morality... It is. So morality is a big topic. I'm not going to get super into it, but just the brass tacks of what we're talking about. Morality is basically a system of rules that guide human conduct and the principles for judging those rules. I'm not going to dig into that anymore because that is a sticky web that we will never leave. Mm-hmm. And you guys are not paying me to metaphorically bukkake myself with ethics at this point. So, little notes about morality though. These can be done on a personal level and there's also a systemic level. So you could have one set of rules of morality for yourself and then there's societal rules and those can exist simultaneously. And they don't have to be concurrent.
People tend to see a no difference between those two, especially when it comes to discourse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which causes a lot of crazy things. Like, I was catching up on my video essays for the month, and I didn't realize that there were people in the Avatar fandom verse that are so mad about the ship of Zuko and Katara that they're equating people that are into Zuko and Katara dating into, like, being sympathizers for imperialism and genocide. And I'm like, what? Hold on. What? Rewind.
Still haven't seen the Blue Cat movie. I knew it got pretty deep, but damn.
Damn. I'm just saying, like, I do agree with the fans. Zuko and Katara should have gotten together because her and Aang don't make sense to me. But moving on. Last little note about morality systems. The systems tend to be public and they tend to be informally enforced. So it's kind of hard to have a morality system if it's only something you know. Like, other people need to be aware of it so that it can be a system. Well, you can have your own personal code. It doesn't really work as a morality system if it's just something you keep in your head and you don't share with people.
Yeah.
And you can't keep a public system if the public doesn't know about it.
Yeah. You could almost view this as the difference between, like, I'm blanking on the game term, but like the coteries set of ethics versus your own players' humanity.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like the chronicle tenets versus like your personal convictions.
Well, there's lines and veils, which is the rules for the players. There's the coterie tenets that are the rules for the people in the coterie and how they're going to act, and then your own character's morality. Mm-hmm. Whereas your parties might be like, we're not going to, like, cause mass murder and burn down buildings. Your character could still be like, I will not take a life. But that doesn't mean the guy you're working with isn't going to kill 3 people over the course of a week and still not break the societal rules you've set. Mm-hmm. But if you did, it would break your own.
Yeah.
So this is mirrored in the game.
Yes.
Directly.
Which is nice. That was a good little overlap. And the other thing that I think is important to note is that morality systems are informal. So legal systems are formal codes of rules. That I would say, like, lines and veils. That is the rules you're setting for the table. We are not crossing these things. Yeah. And in the game system, I guess the best way I would kind of compare the two is, so the Camarilla has the 6 traditions, and that there's like formal rules of like, this is how you do prestation, this is how you introduce yourself to the prince, this is how you ask to get embraced, or to do embracings. And then informal things would just be kind of like you and your coterie, or you and the like people in the city have just kind of a shake by hands rules. Like, okay, we have the formal rules of respecting each other's domain, but like where those actual lines are and how we handle things just like you and me is the informal ones, where it's like, hey, look, I agree to not cross this and go into your area. You agree not to go to mine. If there's a problem, we have a handshake. Mm-hmm. This is our agreement. We're going to move the fuck on. If it goes beyond that, we will elevate to the formal system of bringing this up to the seneschal and having a proceeding and blah, 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 blah. The book brought up a really good example of like pickup basketball, where there's like formal basketball, which is like the NBA, where there's like official rules, or like college basketball, where there's like the ball, if it bounces out of the court, it has to hit like this precise point of the line to stay in, and there's rules about like not grabbing people and yada, 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 yada. But when you're playing pickup basketball, there's general rules that people just kind of have agreed. Like, this is just how we play the game. Mm-hmm. And you can go to a different city and the rules will be a little different. And then people will expect you to adjust to their rules in that area because that's how we play it here. Yeah. It's like when you go to a new group of friends' house and they're playing beer pong and you have to relearn all their weird rules. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, basically. And I know tons of people for all tabletop systems have their own like little home rules, and then there's also just the community has agreed upon what the home rule is, and if you don't follow that, everyone's just like, why are you like this? Yeah. And that can apply even to like the city level in Vampire, where like one prince may interpret those traditions differently than another, where some might be like, you came into my city last night and you didn't present yourself till today. You came in last night, you were supposed to present yourself last night. This is a problem. Where others might be like, oh, you got here Monday? It's Friday. That's perfectly fine. Thank you for... Yeah. It's like, hey, I understand you got to get settled in, yada, yada, yada. You got to find this shit. Yeah. You're trying to maintain masquerade, so you have like extra steps. Like, I get it. You did the thing. But doing the thing is the formal portion of it. How that gets handled would be the informal portion. Yeah. So, yeah. Note, this can get very sticky and confusing very quickly. So if I'm not getting into the nuances in the depth that you would like, please let us know and we can go into that later on.
Yeah, and we did a whole episodes about like Camarilla and the structure and stuff. We could do that for Werewolf next time we do a Werewolf month if people are interested, because they have their own decorum and
it's just between the Camarilla, Sabbat, and the Anarchs. Like the Camarilla would have the most like formal systems, which once it gets formal, I feel like it leaves the space of being a morality system and is now like a legal system. The Sabbat have some formalities, they have some structures, and then the Anarchs is kind of depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
Depends on who's in the kitchen. I don't fucking know. Have fun. So moving on. By engaging with unethical content as mature participants, we can avoid transferring the unethical values of the game onto ourselves. Because virtue ethics, in my opinion, is fucking stupid. And I'll die on this hill. It's like if Dee Snider can get in front of Congress and say that's fucking stupid, I can agree. So, mature players are able to understand the simulation that they are engaging in and understand the actions that they are taking part in are part of that experience. So players have agency to make their own ethical choices, which is something that when people are arguing about quote unquote bad games being bad for people, that's a step they often overlook, is them like, hey, the person who's engaging in this isn't a mindless drone. They are a fully fledged person just like you, and they can make their own fucking choices. And the fact that you're not acknowledging that is weird and just inaccurate. So I don't know why we're having this conversation.
I think an interesting game that's sort of a meta commentary that is Postal 2. Very edgy.
Very edgy.
Very edgy, very 90s vibe. But it is basically a mass shooter simulation that you can beat the entire game peacefully. But it involves you doing things like waiting for a line for 30 minutes in-game to pay a library fee.
Oh, that's so good.
Or you can throw a couple Molotovs and then walk up and pay the bill and leave. But
I like that they're still like processing late fees, even though there's been fire bombings in that world. Like, it was very prescient for the times we live in today. I just feel it. But moving beyond that, games give us a space to experience challenges that exist outside of ourselves, and this play lets us test our own critical and moral thinkings. So yeah, with the Postal 2 thing, which I know it sounds silly, but yeah, you're kind of doing a kind of artistic thought experiment with that whole situation where it's like, yeah, you could just do the chill thing and just like vibe for 30 minutes and pay your fee and go about it, or you can utterly destroy several families and wreak havoc and just get your shit done. And, you know, but it's all in the confines of something outside of yourself, and you can kind of like think about it and process all of that. Players are also capable of removing themselves from a game experience due to issues within or outside of the simulation. So if you are a player and the game is putting you in a situation that you're like, nah, fam, you are capable of leaving.
You can turn off the game.
You can turn off the game.
Tap out.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You can pull your homies aside and be like, hey man, why are we doing this? Like, can we change this? Can we pause? Like, I need 5. You can nope out. Anybody who calls you a bitch for noping out because of something that you think is fucked up, maybe need to recalibrate that friendship. That's my personal thought. Also, there could be issues outside of the game that make you want to not deal with it, where it's like, hey, the content of the game or the situation was fine, but due to, I don't know, political misgivings outside of the game, then now the game internally now is like really heavy and you just don't want to fuck with it. That's valid.
Yeah.
That's completely valid. Various other things. You could just be having a bad day and you're just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not going to engage. You have that autonomy. You should make those calls. Also, players build within themselves and the wider community what morality systems are acceptable, which gives us a duty to each other to hone our values in ways that engage learning, expression, and reduce harm. So, because you have the autonomy to engage with and leave games, you also are taking on the responsibility as a mature player to hold yourself and other people around you accountable for the choices that they are also making. Cool.
And to go to, I think, an often touched upon issue, at least when discussing it in like D&D, it's like the difference between I'm going to pickpocket the key from this guard that we need to get into this building, and I'm going to pickpocket one of the other players because they got something I want. And like that is, I think the interaction is similar there, where it's we kind of tend to brush over like things that aren't happening to the actual characters of the players, but in Vampire it tends to be a lot more messy. Like you tend to take actions that will affect the other players indirectly or directly far more often than you would in something like a D&D. And I think that can be an important line to keep in mind there too when dealing with others, because it's like, yeah, there's this vampire that's been annoying you guys. Someone might try and kill it, not knowing that another player has them as like an ally or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't always discuss your character sheets. You just murked someone's ally. How do we deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be a big enough problem where we need to take like a break and discuss it?
Well, yeah, that's also just a prime example of just how different communities have different morality engagement standards. Because in D&D, PvP and like actions against your party members is a huge no-no.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like,
your buddies on the trail together on an adventure. Why would you hurt each other ever?
Yeah, you're Frodo and Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah, your boyfriends. Your boyfriends
Exactly.
until the campaign's over. Which is great. I'm here for that.
The rule I always used for that, and I probably wouldn't use for Vampire, but for D&D, it's always just been like, we're not rolling dice. You guys can roleplay a fight out if you want, but there will be no long-standing repercussions, except the ones you personally consent to. So if you guys beat the shit out of each other and you say, all right, you agree, we're both going to take some, not bludgeoning because it's D&D, but we'll each take like 5, we're each going to take like 5 HP points off for punching each other a couple times.
Yeah, like I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with PvP as long as everybody's like okay with it. And I mean everyone, not just the two that are engaging.
Yeah, that's why I don't roll dice, because I don't think anyone wants to watch a 2-person combat with initiative and rolling dice and like...
It depends. Sometimes I like that shit, but yeah, like I'm the nerd that's just like, well, I have friends that are like super into building like very specific kinds of characters. And when they do the PvP, we're just being like, oh, you're sparring against a party member and we're just kind of seeing like how your dice pools are going to shake out. Sure. Like, this is just kind of a neat, like, okay, we'll do like, maybe not the full, we're not going to go to a KO, but, you know, agree to like, okay, we're going to go to the equivalent of like first blood or, you know, the first to lose like half their hit points or however you're going to parse it, because fantasy hitboxes get fucking stupid. But in Vampire, it's kind of more expected and understood that things are going to be a little bit more backstabby and a little bit more... You're expected to work together, but you're not expected to be boyfriends.
Yeah.
I guess is the best way to explain that. Like, if you guys do smooch, like, that's fine.
I mean, there's quite literally rules for, like, frenzies, and there are mechanics in the game that could put players at odds with each other without them wanting to. Like, without making the decision, I'm going to fight you. You're just too hungry, and now you're fighting him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, yeah, kind of the equivalent on that is it's the difference between going to a concert at like a bigger proper stadium where you're expected to like dance and, you know, muck about, but you're kind of expected to behave in a certain way, and then going to a house show in a dirty basement where the odds of you leaving without blood on you is like not zero. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a level of violence just there inherently being in the space.
Yeah.
So, hurrah! And last little note on players and whatnot: if a player is incapable of understanding the ethical implications of the material, they cross into dodgy and harmful areas. So, I kind of broke this down into 3 ways where this is commonly, in my experience and other people in the community's ways, that people that are not mature players run into problems, which is there's experience. Some material is just not suitable for minors, period. I'm not having that discussion. There's some things that I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to have a fuck session happen in a game where there's 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Most of this month.
Yeah, most of this month. If you're under 18, I appreciate you wanting to educate yourself. I'm a little squicked, but...
My rule there, as weird as it may feel, my advice there is if you're going to engage in that content, do it with other 16-year-olds.
Yeah. There you go.
Don't do it with your weird 20-year-old friends.
Yeah.
And if they want to, that might be a problem.
If they want to, consider that, take that little red flag, put it in your pocket, and maybe do a different game.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of many topics, because because the popularity of D&D and some of that is going to cross over into World of Darkness. There's a lot of World of Darkness that I'm like, I don't want to run this for under 18s. Like, some of it you can and do kind of like an edgy Vampire Diaries, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Teen Wolf, Riverdale kind of a game. You can do that, but there's a lot of content in this game system that I'm just like, as your storyteller, I'm going to tell you fucking no.
Yeah.
If you guys want to do that, like, I'd prefer you talk to your parents or your supervisor, or just you and your friends have a group chat together. I don't want to see it. Don't send me the memes. Do not send me your Wattpad of the fanfic you've written on your characters. I don't want it. That's you. And there's some subjects that may not be suitable due to lack of experience on the material, and this is just for all age groups. There's topics and experiences that other people have that I will never fully experience. So there's certain types of games that I'm either going to have to do a lot of research on and do lots of check-ins with my table mates, or I might even just tap out because I'm like, hey, there's portions of the trans experience I will never fucking understand, even though I'm non-binary. And I'm like, me portraying that as a player would be weird, let alone including other like ethnic and racial and religious groups and mental health. Yeah, like I wouldn't feel comfortable as a player portraying somebody that has like schizophrenia.
Yeah,
because it does run in my family, but I've never had it, so I don't know what it's like. I don't know if I'd want to accidentally do like mental health face.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine and a valid thing. Ignorance. Not being aware of material can become a teaching moment outside of the game. Players can't make moral actions if they don't have the information. So it's like, if you're somebody that's like, okay, so thing I have seen with World of Darkness as an example is sometimes people will get really excited because there's so much like Roma material within World of Darkness, and they're like, I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, you've been calling yourself the G-slur this entire time. Maybe sit down. You don't seem to understand what this is and what this means. Maybe don't.
It doesn't help that they have a book.
That doesn't help. No, there's a lot of older material that at the time it was like good, but we are well beyond that, and we need to move the fuck on.
We have learned more.
We can do better.
Yeah.
We have the internet now. I can actually go find Romani people and be like, hey, bro, how do we do this and not be shitty? Because there's lots of cool things in your culture, and I do want that, like, celebrated and or explored as part of the world, because you fucking exist in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. Yeah. But people just putting on, like, a boho skirt and being like, I'm a thing. And I'm like, oh my god, I want to fight you.
Just say you have a wanderlust. I still won't respect you, but no one will be mad at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I find it hard to be mad at people when they make choices that are clearly, to me, very bad. But I also have the education that maybe they don't. But I also think it's irresponsible as the storyteller to, I'm going to pivot the game now to be a teach this motherfucker a lesson when the player clearly doesn't understand what the fuck they've done, what they're doing, and what they're getting into. Because then I'm basically like shaming that player.
Yeah, that needs to be a conversation player to player, not character to character.
Yeah, that is a prime, let's pause and talk about this outside of the game. And if we want to continue to discuss this at the table and make it an in and out of character teaching moment, cool. If you want to just rewind it and not do it ever, and we've now gotten more education as a group, cool, that is also fine. We can always scrap it. It is a game. You can always just scrap it. Fuck it. The game does not matter that much. And the third thing that becomes a problem is headspace. Some folks might not be ready for material at certain times. Just due to mood, life issues, mental health. People could just be going through it, and they're just like, hey, so this game is like really paralleling some bullshit going on in my real life, and I just don't want to fucking deal with it, or I can't deal with it, or, you know, that's fine. Happens to everybody. There's no shame in it. It's fine. Then there's other people that might not ever be ready for the material due to their own mix of attitudes, mood, mental health issues. And that's fine, and it should be acknowledged, because, yeah, there's some people that just will never hit the introspective emotional maturity to be able to handle certain material, and that's okay.
And I was talking to someone the other day that was talking, this reminded me of it, like, watch out and talk to your friends still, because I was talking to somebody who was watching Shogun, which I have not seen at all. The new one. The new one, yeah. Yeah, the
FX series that's like all in Japanese.
Yes.
It looks really pretty.
I hear it's absolutely awesome.
Hell yeah.
It's also, very violent and pretty gory. Yeah. And apparently this lady does not do terribly well with violence, and yeah. Yeah. It was like, oh, okay, well, she learned. She took a moment, and she was like, I cried. I turned it off for a little bit, but I really wanted to watch it. So I went back to it, and I was like, good on you. You knew what you're getting into, at least.
If you've seen it, you know. But I know there's a specific scene in the second half of the Fallout series that is kind of turning people off the show. It gets a little extreme.
Really?
Yeah, which totally valid. I don't want to give spoilers, but if you know, you know.
Yeah, that's why there's websites like Does the Dog Die? It's like super good if that's a point of contention for you.
Right.
IMDb has a good parents guide too.
Yeah, that's also good. Yeah, at least in me being a somewhat forever ST, there are lots of, like, heavy bullshit things that I fucking love because I just like heavy material. It's a problem I have. I'm the friend that's like, everyone's like, yeah, we're having a good time, and then I just drop, like, a very devastating fact.
I had to stop myself in that conversation because they were talking like, wow, I didn't realize that, like, Japanese people did all that stuff back then. And I was like, it was all I could do not to be like, you ever hear Unit 731?
Yeah!
Because you'll learn some stuff, friend. But I was like, I probably shouldn't even bring that up if she can't watch this show.
I have done I thought I was sharing a cool fact, but I just, like, Tina Belcher destroyed a conversation so many times. And, like, that's fine, but there's some topics that I'm like, I would love to run games on, but they do involve topics and issues that have a gravitas that need to be respected in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And there's just certain people I know that, because of where they are with their relationship and attitudes to gaming, I'm like, you are too silly for this. Mm-hmm. I would love to have you at the table, not that game.
Right.
And that's fine.
We will hit you up when we go to Shadowrun.
Yeah! When I do silly Shadowrun, because I can also do very Shadowrun.
Yeah, Shadowrun can be grim.
Yeah! Alright, so, on the flip side from players, the responsible storytellers need to design their stories and game mechanics in ways that are clearly understood.
Can I yell at this guy who just had his dog poop in your yard and he's walking away now?
Uh-oh.
He's too far now, never mind.
He's too far now.
I was going to open the window and say, pick up your dog's shit.
Oh, no.
It's a lot of that in this neighborhood. It's fine.
It happens.
But if we start yelling at them from windows.
I guess take two. So responsible storytellers need to design their stories and game mechanics in ways that are clearly understood by the players, justifiable within the game experience, and allow the players to reflect on their actions in meaningful ways.
Okay.
So it's a two-way street. You have to have players that are gonna understand what they're getting into and be aware of themselves enough to understand themselves well enough to give, like, proper feedback and da-da-da-da, but on the flip side, you also need to have storytellers that are not going to set up games that are, basically become plot traps. Like, because, yeah, I've been in games where people are just, like, doing super fucking edgy things, and you're just like, you didn't tell me this is what the game was going to be, so, like, how am I supposed to, like, I didn't build a character for that, I, as a player, didn't prep for this.
Yeah.
How the fuck am I supposed to engage with this and not just, like, be a monster? Like, is the whole point of this to be, like, we're terrible people simulators? Like, that's cool if that's the game you want to run, but why'd you not tell me that? Like, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, this is insane.
On a much smaller and less devastating level, it's much like somebody being like, oh, this is going to be like a politicsy campaign. We're going to be hanging out in the castle most of the time. And you're like, cool, I'll build a politician. And then they're like, yeah, the castle's actually under siege and there are dragons falling from the sky. We're going to be fighting for the next 5 sessions. You might be like, oh.
So you set me up for failure, sick.
I might have put some points in, I don't know, some sort of combat skill.
I might have brought a sword.
Right, yeah.
Also, it's a little bit, for me, I see it as a bit of a pacing, that's a good way, but pacing discussion too. Because if you are going to hit people with very heavy information dumps or hit on really heavy topics, like Sarah's like, say, might be time for a beach episode after that.
Yeah.
Like, give people time to process that. Give people time to have their characters process that. If that's something they want to explore. Like, you don't have to be, every episode have to be like worse and worse and worse and worse and heavier and here's something else fucked up. Also, eventually that just loses its impact. You kind of get the 40K effect where, like, it
starts
circles,
becoming funny.
It either becomes funny or it just doesn't even register as, like, meaningful anymore.
1,000 psychers a day. It's like, that is a number that I cannot understand.
Yeah.
This guy's been alive for how long?
Yeah, it's having the reflection time is important because then that gives your players the space to make choices. Because you're constantly putting them in situations as a storyteller where they're having to just, like, scrabble to survive or just suffer and just kind of hope for the best. They're not able to make choices and therefore can't be moral agents, and therefore you're taking away their ability to be ethical and mature players.
Yeah.
Which that sucks.
Yeah.
Taking away autonomy sucks.
Don't do it.
Asterisks, if you're doing that for a plot beat, talk about it ahead of time. Because
you can do things without a character's consent with the player's consent.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I know there's people that are just like, what do you mean I can never take away player autonomy? And I'm like, you can never take away player autonomy. You can take away character autonomy, but part of that is touching base with the player and being like, hey, so because of plot reasons, I need X, Y, and Z to happen, which means this thing is going to happen to your character for roughly this amount of time. I don't want to give away all the spoilers, but I just need you to know, like, your character's gonna go through some shit. Is that cool? And just like, yes or no.
Right.
That also can be a session 0 discussion, depending on what you're running. I would say specifically, I'm a fan, but like second ed version of Ravenloft, kind of mechanics for taking away both at times. And that's just a discussion that needs to be had. It's like, if we are running this as is written in the 90s with these rules, these are things that could happen to you or your character. Are you okay with that? You don't have to give spoilers. You can't even guarantee that it'll be happen. But if the dice roll, you might just not know what's happening to your character. You as a player might not know what's happening to your character, and so they are losing their autonomy too. But you need to just state ahead of time that is on the table. And I think that's worth discussing too, even with things like Malkavians and illusions and all that. Is like, I might tell you something and you might make a choices based on false information because that is what the game is presenting to you.
Like, are you good with that? Cool. And here is our plan for if this becomes uncool.
Yeah.
Because, I'm generally not somebody that's like, don't ever do this, but I'm like, do it with safety glasses on.
Yeah.
Have a little checklist. Have an eye wash station nearby.
you need to have safety scissors and a word.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? They've got to be on hand.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah. And also, a little thing I wanted to note, game design is also not neutral. I know there's a lot of discourse in the community that is like, I should be able to just play games and there not be politics in them. And I'm like, that literally can't fucking happen. You fucking dumbass.
Yeah, especially in games like this. Like, D&D, it's a fantasy game. It's a little bit easier to try to escape from real-world politics. Yeah. But Vampire is happening tonight.
Like, in our world, but it's got like a 2000s grainy green filter.
Yeah. It's like you look outside and the same shit is happening in the vampire world.
Damn, it's beautiful today in the world of darkness.
It is, though.
Yeah,
today,
too bad we're
having a beach episode today.
Oh, thank God.
The werewolves, though, they're having a fine time.
Yeah, they're having a great time. Yeah. They're probably laying bellies down on some rock, panting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Happiest little lads.
But yeah.
Vampire happens now. Politics affect vampire culture.
Yeah.
Vampire culture is politic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like, even just outside of Vampire and into the wider world of darkness and into the even wider community and world of gaming. Because games are designed, there is inherently choices being made that will be political. It's like with all art. It is designed, therefore there's going to be some sort of messaging within it. Therefore it is inherently political. Like, the fact that some people feel they can sit back on their laurels and be like apolitical is a political stance and a just weird show of your own privilege that you apparently are not processing. And that's a thing you can figure out on your own time, friend. And I
believe in you.
I have a Venmo. We can talk about it later. Which, by the way, I'm advocating for people online. If somebody is being an asshole to you, if you're done with the conversation, just drop a Venmo link and leave. Tell them what your hourly rate is. Go about your day. It has worked for me fantastically. Because either the conversation completely stops, or a Nazi pays you $500 to debate and then backs out like a bitch. And then you have $500.
That is true.
Anywho. But yeah. With game design, it is a tool for sharing ideas, and how a game is designed to reward and challenge players will determine how your players engage with and interpret your messaging. So, as a storyteller, if you're setting up situations constantly where the players are fighting and having a violent combat, and that is how they solve all their problems, you as a storyteller cannot suddenly be surprised that your players' response to everything is violence.
Yeah,
that's kind of... I think people over-exaggerate it sometimes, but that is like the design for D&D, and different game designs build into different play styles.
Yeah.
Like, World of Darkness is specifically designed for role-playing through scenarios. Combat is possible. Romance is possible. Political intrigue is possible. But they're all done more through role-playing. And so that tends to be, there's more discussion happening. There's more there's a lot more going on there. Whereas D&D tends to be, all right, we're going to solve every problem through rounds of combat.
Yeah.
Or Call of Cthulhu is, all right, well, we have to go investigate the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the game itself, game design, sets up how you tackle those problems, too.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're playing a game that is combat-focused...
Yeah, so...
And if you're playing Shadowrun, you're playing the game of, okay, how are we going to
We're going to steal the problem.
Yeah, we're going to steal the problem, and then how are we going to pay the Ripper Doc?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Mage is how are we going to comprehend the problem?
And then shatter it. And I'm going to break this reality and design my own.
With blackjack and hookers.
Yeah. I do need to get that Mythbuster shirt. I've been wanting to get it for fucking years. I've just never gotten it. Anywho. But yeah, so that's something as a storyteller side, do make sure you're keeping aware of, particularly because in Vampire, the game, world, and system itself is designed to be unethical.
Mm-hmm.
It is immoral. You need to calibrate how that is parsed and how your players want to engage in that. And if you have it set a certain way, you need to make sure your players are fucking aware of this. Because, dear God, there's so many games I've been in where people assume that one sect or another is the quote-unquote good guys. And I've had to be like...
No such thing, friend.
The Camarilla is literally white supremacy on steroids. If you do not pick up on this, like, we need to have a sit-down talk and maybe deconstruct a little bit why you didn't pick up on the theming.
Even the anarchs are unorganized culture vultures and usually people taking advantage of revolutions for their own gain.
Yeah, the anarchs are, particularly in V5, really well set up to do a lot of good critiques on the left. And I wish more people were aware of this, because I keep running into people online that are just like, oh, the anarchs are just anarcho-capitalists. And I'm like, no.
I mean, some are.
Some are. That's been some of my favorite ha-has in the new system is the libertarian bros in the Anarch movement. It's so funny. But it's because I find those kinds of people
funny.
Fucking silly in like a dangerous way. But yeah, so the games that you are writing and the stories you are telling can reflect your internal self in ways that you might not be ready for. And also you need to go into it understanding that the stories that you are telling and encouraging will affect players at your table, and because players talk to each other, people outside of the wider community. So maybe setting up games where the dickhead guy that like is old and rich and keeps stealing all the money maybe isn't aspirational and somebody that should be maybe confronted in some way.
Probably.
Might be good. Having NPCs that are constantly racist or sexist and not being checked sets up a world where you're kind of allowing that shit to slide. And so maybe having NPCs that question or counter that would be good if you're not setting up your players to confront that shit. Yeah, because you can accidentally tacitly agree to shit that you don't agree with through your games telling. And that's something to always just kind of keep in mind. So hooray, two-way street, being mature people.
Yay!
You can fuck with bad shit.
Yay!
It's fine. Just don't be dumb about it.
Yeah!
You're a thinking adult. Speaking of thinking adults, what is bleed?
I've went over this, Sarah.
Yes.
It's when your body gets cut open and your inside juices come out.
Unfortunately, though, I have the set of organs where that just happens and I'm not been cut.
Oh, yeah.
No.
That happens, too.
Yeah.
It's a different bleed.
It is a different bleed. This is also a different bleed. So, Bloodstained Love defines bleed as the transference of emotions from your character to yourself and vice versa, which is probably the most succinct way I've seen that defined.
I also need to say I started that book. I was one of the people who's like, I have zero interest in that book. I was surprised how much I've enjoyed it so far.
Oh, good.
At least the stuff it's setting up. There's actual, like, important lore in there.
There's some
It is
important
not
stuff.
just love stories. We'll get to it later this month. But
Yes.
for everyone who's been on the fence about that book,
Yeah.
recommend giving it a shot.
It is a recommend with an asterisk for me, and this section will get into that a little bit.
Okay.
So, bleed is something that everyone will experience from time to time. You know, if you're really hyped from a game and it like boosts your mood for the rest of the day,
That is bleed.
that is bleed. If something outside of the game or something, you know, in your daily life follows you into the game and you're kind of like, meh, that is also the same thing.
Bleed in the opposite direction. And it doesn't even have to directly be narrative either. If you're playing D&D or Fortnite or Overwatch or whatever, and a combat or a match or whatever, it doesn't go well. It doesn't have to be the narrative that makes you upset. I just rolled fucking bad all night. That's a type of bleed to some extent too.
Yeah.
It's affecting your real life mood by what happens in the game. You could lose Monopoly can cause bleed.
Yeah, and there's also...
That is the literal purpose of Monopoly.
Yeah, to make you mad.
Yeah, it's to cause bleed.
Yeah.
It's to ruin friendships.
Well, actually, kind of, yes. Because Monopoly was made by a leftist woman in the 1800s as a way to show that capitalism bad, in fact.
Nice.
And basically, capitalist guys showed up and they're like, hey, can we buy this board game from you? And she's like, oh, people want to share my teaching tool. That's wonderful. And she just got fucked.
Yeah.
Also, Monopoly cannot function without built-in universal basic income.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is part of the teaching tool of Monopoly. I am claiming Monopoly as leftist praxis. Anyways. Because it is, goddammit. Anyways. It's just, I find it super ironic that Monopoly's got bought up and it's just been rebranded into every fucking IP everything.
Mm-hmm. Some of the alternative rules are kind of cool.
Sometimes, yeah, you can get some cool alt rules. And I do like the little trinkets of the little characters. I used to have a charm bracelet where I took all the trinkets from a broken Monopoly set and I just made it into a bracelet.
Nice.
It was very cute. Anyways, so bleed is something you can also experience not at game, and it's a thing that I feel like is very common, which is people haven't really like codified it in that way. So, you know, like when you have a bad day at work and you're in a bad mood at home, or vice versa.
It's bleed.
That is bleed.
Earlier, Skipper mentioned the friend who was watching the Japanese TV show, and it made them feel very emotional upset. That is bleed.
Yeah, listening to music that makes you happy or sad or whatever, and then that mood like carries on afterwards. It's something we all deal with and regulate all the time. Yeah, so it's nothing to be like afeared of.
So bleed is not the problem specifically.
No.
It's how we handle it.
Yeah, there's been
discourse.
There's been discourse. Those of us in the U.S. have a certain relationship with the concept of bleed, which, of course, Americans are the ones that either freak out too hard one way or the other and are just very dramatic about it in our feels. And, and I'm just like, y'all, if you sat down and had a fucking Capri Sun and thought about this for like 5 seconds, it's fine. But then there's other sides of this, and we're gonna get there. So, thing I did want to note specifically, while bleed can happen to anyone, bleed is controllable. And going back to our thing that we stole from Marcus Parks from last podcast on the left, while your mental and emotional health is not your fault, it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
So, just because you're having a feeling does not mean you're entitled to fuck up everybody else's day. You're allowed to have your emotions. Those are valid. We all gotta work on processing together.
Boop boop.
Yeah. Woo. You're not alone, homies. My brain's also scrambled.
Like eggs.
Can you tell? We do this show. Anyhow. So what is the problem with bleed? Why is it seen as a problem? So the situations can arise where players and storytellers either do not form or cannot maintain separation between themselves and the game simulation. That's where this problem kind of kicks in. So it isn't uncommon for folks to mention that, like, hey, I'm having a rough time IRL, so I'm not playing in the way I typically would. Just letting y'all know. God, how many times have we done that with each other?
Yeah.
But over the course of the game, we have fun. Things kind of lighten up. And that's totally fine to acknowledge and validate. Or the, hey homies, this scene was a little intense. We're going to take a break and talk about this. Or you get to the end of the game and you have a little wind down chit chat about like how everybody felt about it, how everybody's excited, not excited, planning for the future, things that need to be calibrated and changed. Super normal.
Good stuff.
Cool. Good stuff. Not a problem. Communication and calibration is always good. Hooray. This crosses into unfun territory when the system breaks down. So common versions of this that I have experienced and other people have also shared, there's several YouTube channels of people sharing their D&D horror stories. A lot of them are bleed issues. So if you want to ever go down that rabbit hole of just like, what the fuck? But I'm also the same person that likes podcasts that do Am I the Asshole reads. So... A lot of material, but common ones we run into are frustrations on how a scene or a system is being run, getting taken as personal slights is fairly common, where the storyteller could just be running the game, running the system per usual, but either things in the plot seem to be directly affecting a specific character or just the dice are fucking you. And you start to get frustrated, you will perceive this as like, I think that storyteller's fucking with me, or the players are out to get me or something, and it just causes frustrations.
This isn't VTM at all, but
yes.
This specific thing is very very common in Magic, multiplayer formats especially.
Oh, like Magic the Gathering?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you're playing a game and you have built up a good board, if you are a threat, the game will target you for a minute. And sometimes that threat assessment gets a little bit off because you were very scary. And you're not scary right now, but we know what you can do. And so they're still, quote unquote, picking on you to make sure you don't fucking kill them.
Yeah.
But it will sometimes feel like what the hell, guys? I'm just trying to play the game, and you're
y'all been up my ass for 2 hours.
Yeah. And it will sometimes, there's a bit of bleed there. There's saltiness.
Yeah, and that can be unfun. Some people super love that kind of shit. Some people are like, I just wanted a vibe. Why? Yeah. Moods from outside the game can affect player or storyteller decisions in ways that can cause concern for others involved or alter gameplay in ways that are undesirable later on. I've seen this where people are they're having a day and they decide to use the game as a outlet for this, so they'll just in character do something that's kind of out of pocket, and then later on they're just like, oh shit.
Oops.
Well, I've completely altered the plot of the game now.
Too late for me.
Fuck. Or, storytellers that get too wrapped up into like telling their story, and then they forget that the players are supposed to be like giving their input, and they kind of railroad a bunch of shit because they're overly excited, which I appreciate being a storyteller and people like in my games, but I have to try to make sure I don't get too up on my own bullshit because it's supposed to be collaborative, and if I'm railroading, I might as well just be writing a fucking story at that point. Why am I involving my friends?
Yeah. It is a weird balance for storytellers because like you have an idea for a plot point or plots that's like very cool.
Yeah.
You want to tell the story.
Yeah.
But also
it's also a session 0 discussion. It depends on the game. I mean, I had that problem about 2 years ago where I sat down to run a game for a group of people. I openly said, I bought this pre-written adventure. We are writing this pre-written adventure. Here is the setup and the rules for this pre-written adventure that I'm running directly as is written in the book. And then 2 sessions in, one of the players, who ignored all the setup that I gave them for the pre-written adventure, started complaining that the character they made did not function within the pre-written adventure.
Great.
There's a little bit of like a...
Well...
we discussed this. You said you were cool with this. If you're changing your mind, we can either adapt or this might not be the game for you.
Yeah.
And I think Vampire doesn't have as many, and when it does, they're a little more open form. But as tabletop, as a art form, we'll call it, has many different ways that the railroading discussion can go. There are literally D&D campaigns that are like, these are all the 5 locations you go to. You are assuming the players are going to take the next plot point and go stop, maybe rest, maybe buy a potion and a beer in between, but they're not, oh, well, we heard about some wizard over there 20 miles away, so we're just going to go do that instead.
Yeah.
That's not actually in this adventure. That is background fluff. Do we want to continue what we're doing, or do I need to take a month to write a new campaign because you have moved your interest over there?
And in that case, for that storyteller, if they decided to like, okay, well, I had all this stuff written, I'm going to scrap it and go for the side mission. If they're in a bad mood about it, they might write that side mission to go to that wizard's tower to be extraordinarily hard, and everybody's like extra dickish, or there's a lot of Paralyze enemies, or just you go to the wizard's tower, it's full of nothing but rust monsters. Get fucked.
Maybe you should have gone on the path that was sunny and bright and happy that I pointed you down.
I don't know how to play battle music any louder.
The king who needs you to save his daughter gave you a map. You did not follow that map. Amazingly, something went bad, huh, guys?
Yeah. So there's kind of a balance between like giving consequences and doing weird personal digs, or giving or being too excited about a particular player, so you just start giving them a lot of goodies to encourage them, but then you're not also giving the occasional goodies to the other players, and then that can cause resentment and issues. And there's tons of horror stories. There's tons of ways this can go sideways.
And we could do a whole episode on that. I actually think that would be fun. I almost put it on the patron poll, so I don't know if we want to do it as a patron episode or a main episode. But just a whole episode on campaign prep, talking about like how we prep to run a game, what we recommend laying out, how we do it, maybe giving examples of things we've done in the past.
Sick. Yeah, I'd be down.
I feel like that could be good for either. I think it might be good, a main episode, real episode, but
let patrons message us in the group chat and let us know.
Yeah. Or if you like the regular show, let us know in feedback if that's something you really would love to hear. Because I feel like we tend to focus on helping new people, and I feel like that's a really big step to help people through. I feel like that's kind of important.
Oh yeah, for sure.
To get into, but
yeah, last little step on the things that make the game unfun because of bleed is aggressions or flirtations between characters carry on after session, especially when it is not communicated that this is something wanted by any involved party. This has been a big common one within the World of Darkness community as a problem TM.
Yeah.
It's a game where for a lot of people, World of Darkness games, particularly Vampire, is the first game where they can like actually do flirty flirt date sims.
Right.
Until basically Baldur's Gate 3. Turn D&D into a dating sim, which is fantastic. But, yeah, which is cool. But then there's people that are, like, not used to managing the emotional regulation to run those kinds of games and characters. Sometimes the PvP elements can get a little aggro at tables in World of Darkness games in ways that people aren't prepped for. And
it's
then,
a deadly game.
Yeah, and then it carries over into people just, like, being snarky outside of game, which is, like, the low tier of it, where it's just like, you guys are normally not this snarky at each other. Why is this continued?
Right.
And sometimes it's fun. Like, we still make fun of some of our friends if they are their old player characters.
I mean, we do it with each other, but we also have, like, the years of experience and understanding between each other of, like, where the bounds are and shit like that, and because we've actually fucking communicated. Shocking.
That's also, I was using an example of the good kind of bleed.
Yeah, and then bleed can further escalate into harmful situations, which is the extra... Why the World of Darkness community kind of freaked out about this book a little bit, because you can get into situations where hurt or betrayed feelings will alter and or ruin friendships, because people get wrapped up in game stuff, and then it crosses over into friendship issues, and then it comes into blowouts, and go look up D&D horror stories for plethoras of examples of this problem.
Really, any role-playing game.
Any role-playing game. Yeah, we just have to be Vampire the Masquerade World of Darkness focused, but bleed happens in all fucking tabletop games. So these are skills you can pick up and carry wherever else you may go in your gaming adventures.
I tend to think that D&D and Vampire tend to be the two that have the most horror stories that I've found, though. I haven't heard too many Call of Cthulhu ones, but that game is...
I've had a couple of weird Call of Cthulhu issues, but that was because I play Octoon Cthulhu. So it's Call of Cthulhu, but it's during World War II.
Yeah, that's almost setting yourself up for failure there. I'm not blaming you, but I just mean anyone playing that game in general might.
I go into that because I'm a big Hellboy fan, and I'm like, I gotta go punch Nazis? Hell yeah, this is great. Fucking Lobster Johnson, let's go. And then, you run into tables where you have to, like, do the bit of, okay, I know this is embarrassing, but I have to ask, have you now ever been a member of the Nazi Party? Like, kind of unironically, because you run into those guys that are, like, a little too into the History Channel.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The other big issue, affections cross boundaries resulting in unwanted advances, touching, and other forms of attention. This is the big thing in the community that I know stops people from playing Vampire, because they've heard horror stories of people playing Vampire. There's been some flirty flirts. The bleed carries over into real life, and there's issues with, groping, stalking, tons of other shit. Leading up and can include some assaults that has happened in the community between people. It's fucking horrifying. This is also things that don't just affect World of Darkness. There's been a bunch of issues coming out in, like, the D&D space about these issues happening. There's been all sorts of issues from, like, really prolific people in the community that are well-known and well-respected coming out and being revealed that they've done fucked shit, all the way down to just, like, the creepy guy in your community that everybody keeps trying to, like, boot from the game store, but he won't fucking leave. So, yeah, this is why... While bleed is common, happens to everybody, preventing these situations is why we need to, like, take this shit seriously and make sure that we all communicate and have the good calibration things. Because, like, I have some fucking horror stories about this shit, guys, and I'm not opposed to sharing it, but we'll save that as if people want to hear the horror stories, to be like, hey, here's examples of this can go fucking wrong very quickly.
Mine aren't too intense. Most of mine have been, like, I started running D&D when I was still a teenager, early college with some of my friends, mostly males, who I can do anything, does creepy thing.
Yeah.
Even if there were no females in the room, even the other dudes were like, bro, can we chill for a second? Can we talk?
Why are you like this?
Let's not do that.
Does your female ninja have to get naked again to solve a problem?
Yeah. Or, yeah, like, some of my first early creepy situations with bleed things was, one of my high school D&D games, I was playing a ranger, and there's a bard in the party who kept, like, trying to steal my character's, like, undergarments.
Gross.
Ew.
Which, because of manga and things at the time, I thought he was doing a bit, so I just kind of let it go. But then it turned into, like, them kind of trying to do that outside of the game. Like
Ew.
in the trying to continue the bit outside of the game, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
This is
weird.
This is weird. And because it was like pre-Gamergate, nobody had my back, so I just kind of had to like figure out a way to like comedian haha my way into getting it to stop. Because if I handled it aggressively, I would be a bitch and get kicked out of the game. And I was like, well, I don't want to lose my friends, but I also don't want this guy trying to sneak into my bedroom to grab my undergarments. Like, that's weird. I don't know how to. Yeah. So that was just one of many terrible things I've dealt with in gaming. So yeah, bleed. It's important. Talk to your homies when they're doing creepy shit.
Mm-hmm.
But the other final thing I want to note on is sometimes, and I've not personally dealt with this, but I've had other people tell me this has happened at their tables, of frustrations boiling over into rage and physical fights. This has happened a couple of times.
Yep. I've never experienced that, but
yeah. I haven't, thankfully. I have, for certain gaming things that I deal with, I've told people flat out, like, hey, I have a pretty hard, fast rule. If somebody shows up and they're being racist, homophobic, transphobic, on any of that kind of shit, it's not on site, but I am going to frog march them out of the space, and if they continue to be a problem, this will become a physical altercation.
I've seen more physical altercations build out of board games and card games. I've never really seen it in the tabletop community.
I have not seen table. I've had a few like Smash Bro like friend tournaments get out of hand.
Yeah, video games big time. I've definitely had some blows come out of Halo when I was in high school, but
yeah, so it's like is this common? No. Can it happen? Yeah, but usually when that situation arises, you have a lot of steps in between that you can interject and be like, hey friends, why? So yeah, so bleed's important. It can cause some horrifying things to happen to you and your friends, and there's things you can do to avoid it. Continuing on, so there's bleed calibration. So the best ways to handle this is 1, design your games with care-based community from the fucking beginning. A lot of these problems can be avoided from the beginning.
You just fucking care about each other.
Yeah.
Weird.
Weird that. So before you even set pen to paper, you turn OBS on into Twitch, whatever the fuck. Your game group needs to be able to talk to each other about boundaries, expectations, and trust. Mm-hmm. So these steps can be as formal as informal as you desire or required for your playstyle. I'm just going to briefly talk about 4 major playstyles that the community we all engage with. The most common, friends at home, just doing a game. Hello, friends. At a table, probably snacks. Feed your storytellers. Anyways. These kind of games, you probably know each other well enough to know what will work and won't work, still touching base to get an idea and do check-ins regularly.
Well, I can't tell you how many times that either your character and my character will would get snippy with each other, or especially me and Bennett's.
Oh yeah.
Just be like, fuck off, and then afterward, Bennett and I are like, fuck off at each other all the time anyway, but it's the loving kind of fuck off.
Afterwards it's very adorable, just like, hey man, are you good? Like, yeah, no, it's all good. I'm just like, oh, the homies are gotta kiss each other goodnight.
You're so tsundere to each other.
They really are. I love the bromance. It's adorable. That is wholesome masculinity. Is telling your homie to fuck off with love.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. All right, so the next style of game that's pretty common is friends online.
That's most of my games right now.
Yeah. So it's worth having a proper session 0. Digital friendships, super valid. Mm-hmm. I think they're real friends. I know there's been some weird internet friends are not the same as real friends, and I'm like, yes, but no.
Mm-hmm. I have internet friends who are staying at my house right now to come visit.
Yeah, so. They brought you a sandwich, like a fucking gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yes. They get a green flag from me. But yeah. But because of communication cues that can be missed due to digital spaces, especially if you're doing VC only as opposed to video, there's just whole avenues of communication that are just you're not getting because you're not seeing the person.
Yeah.
So making sure...
Especially if you don't have camera on.
Yeah. Make sure that open comms are accessible and vital, and you guys are cool with, just talking. Because I know sometimes people are like, well, it's a new group of friends, and I don't want to seem uncool. I'm like, no, share the thing. Share the thing. You can do it in a way that's respectful and not just, freaking the fuck out and being weird about it. Mm-hmm. But, share the thing. If you're playing in a game with a group of people that you can't share the thing, maybe go to a different game.
Yeah, I've been hanging out with some close friends recently that's not in this circle here. Yeah. And the thing that I've been hearing people say a lot is do what makes you happy and do what gives you life. Mm-hmm. And the people that don't like that you're doing that, as long as you're not hurting people, they're not your fucking friends. Mm-hmm. So go back to your friends who are I don't really care about what this is, but you're happy doing it, so I am interested.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. And other little note I wanted to point out is online games can open doors to communications in character and out of character at all times of the day, which presents more opportunities for there to be bleed issues. Because yeah, I've done some online like text RP games, server games, but because it's online server text-based games, you can be responding at any point in the day. Contiguously, and some people get really wrapped up in the in-character bullshit and will not separate my communications with them in character to me as a person outside of that, because they have mostly percentile-wise interacted with me in character, and they just kind of forget that shit.
Yeah.
And can also lead to stress of, like, people just constantly bombarding the storyteller because they have online things, because you just have, they're in your fucking pocket.
I need to hit up Arden.
Yeah. No, it's a good tool, but also be respectful of the fact that the people on the other side of the screen is also a person with life and bills and other bullshit going on.
Feel free to hit them up with questions. Most storytellers are happy to answer your questions. But if they don't get back to you within like the same hour or day or even couple days, be patient.
Yeah, it's not a slight at you.
No, maybe hit them one ping, like, hey, just checking in after like a week.
Yeah, or a few days, just being like, hey, just following up. You good?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. Just be patient.
Yeah, no worries. Big thing that's getting more and more popular in the community is actual plays. So people getting together to play games, but it's streamed for an audience. This can be pre-recorded or done live. That's what this is. So, actual plays. Session 0 is a must. You fucking have to do this if you get into any actual play and they do not do a Session 0. Bail. Don't. This will go bad. Everything that is expected and was going to be happening, or the way you guys are agreeing to calibrate, you're adults, I am assuming. Figure it out how you want to handle it. There's loads of options. But I definitely recommend having all of that stuff listed out somewhere that everybody has access to and is able to be updated as needed. Because I've seen groups where there's consent sheets, but they're not set up in a way where people can access them, so that the players who have, like me, ADHD, and would just like forget, like, oh, this is a no-go topic, and then they might accidentally cross a boundary because they're just like, oh, fuck, I didn't have the list, or what the expectations are and all that kind of shit.
What I tend to do for those as an ST, I'll be honest, when I'm playing with you guys and people I've known forever and been playing with for like a decade, we typically don't even use them. It's kind of like we said at the beginning, like if it's a friends group, you might already know and be chill. But like when I've run for people online, I take everyone's sheet and I mark, there's the specific one that we've recommended before.
One from Monty Cook.
From Monty Cook. I use that one. And then I mark every single one, whichever character rates the highest, we'll say, for something, as a veil and as a line. It calls them something yellow light, red light. But basically,
they do red, yellow, green on that sheet.
Yeah, but basically, I mark whoever put that the lowest. That's just what I lay out. I make one sheet. So if anyone says yellow for something, I mark it yellow, but if someone else says red, then that's red. And you just go through
so you combine all the sheets into one, like, community sheet?
Yeah, and then you design the game around that one sheet that you have to pay attention, and it depersonalizes it, so it's not, I can't use the spiders because Derek's afraid of spiders. It's like, okay, so we're not using spiders because as a group we've decided that. I think that's helpful. It's nice to be able to do that, but it's also nice to put yourself in a position where you don't have to mentally say, I'm not upset with Derek, even though I spent 2 weeks designing a Spider Queen lair. It's more of a, okay, we can't do this. I'm not going to do this. Moving on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a lot easier than being like, all right, I think they're going to have to fight a rabid dog. Ah, shit. Well, now I have to go through 5 different PDFs to make sure that's going to work for everybody.
Right.
Like, do it once.
Just check once.
You're done.
And I'm also going to recommend...
And you can also make that list public.
Yeah.
Like, because no one's name is on it. Make that community list public. Because then, like Sarah's saying, players won't accidentally be like, oh, I came to the table with this guy who has... unliving hive, but it's all spiders with Derek at the table who doesn't like spiders. You know, you'd know before you made characters.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we can't hit spiders.
It was like I hadn't looked at the sheet. We did session 0 like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
I forgot about the spiders. Fuck. Right. And you're like, I should have filled them with scorpions. Fuck.
If you're a real whiz, you could even, if everyone greenlights something, make a like condensed sheet where you just don't mention it. You only mention the yellow lights and red lights, and you just have a short list.
Yeah, just a pinned comment somewhere like, here's our no-goes, and I would recommend below that a list that is the group's agreement on if things are across, this is what our standard reaction is going to be. Because sometimes with actual plays, you're doing it mixed professional with people that you're like, hey, this is a business thing. We're basically actors agreeing to do a public performance.
And it's live improv.
Yeah, it's live improv, and then there's some of it where you're mixing in friends. And when you get into those spaces, sometimes people do that thing where they're just like, yeah, this person crossed the line, but they're my friend, and I don't want to chew them out.
Right.
And I'm like, fuck it, we already have the agreed upon. You fuck up, 1 strike, 2 strike, 3 strike, or however the fuck.
Right.
The group is agreeing to calibrate the situation. We've already agreed. It's black and white, clear as crystal. Mm-hmm. You stole fizzy lefty drinks. So... yeah, and because there is the public performance aspect of an actual play, there is a bleed aspect, which I don't have a lot of information on, but I have been witnessing it because you're now adding a parasocial element to the game now. So there might be people in the public who will form a parasocial relationship and have bleed issues with your character.
You have a bad guy, and you are walking in the street, and they start spitting at your feet. That kind of
thing. Like the guy who played Joffrey in Game of Thrones. Like, he did way too good.
He did great.
He did fantastic, but he did so good he had to quit acting because everybody kept bullying him.
Yep.
Yeah, and, there's those kinds of things to be aware of when you're stepping into that kind of gameplay. Mm-hmm. And then there is LARPs, which is a live-action role-play game. For those who do not know, so these are games where you and your friends, sometimes strangers, oftentimes strangers, new friends, will all be in a big room or a big park or a big castle, wherever you're doing the event, and you're going to be playing out a game together, often in costumes. It's live improv, but it's in a big room with people as opposed to projecting it onto the internet.
Right.
I would say for LARPs, expectations and gameplay content warnings should be listed prior to engaging with the game so people know what the fuck they're getting into, so they can agree or disagree before even getting into the fucking door. Check-ins with your troop should be happening. The new player check-ins to go over expectations and understanding the rules. Having storytellers, narrators, adjudicators walking around and just occasionally tapping folks, being like, "You having a good time? Okay, cool." Having dedicated spaces for people to have a fucking snack and defrag. A specific place of, this is the out of character space. I came here to drink some water so I don't fucking die.
Yeah.
That kind of shit. Arbiters should be clearly labeled and accessible to players and storytellers alike, because you're playing games one-on-one. Sometimes people just get really caught up in their feels, and having folks around that are able to parse things out that are not emotionally involved in the scene is good to have. Safety tools should be openly discussed and available, so everybody knows what the expectations are for handling consent calibrations and behavioral things. Because sometimes people get really wrapped up in what they're doing and they get out of fucking pocket. Or, people are coming into the scenes with their own baggage and their own experiences and skill levels, and they might not match yours, and they will cross a line in a way. So having the ability to know who to speak to and how that is being handled is important.
Mm-hmm.
Are we working by Gen Con to have the LARP zine we did made available publicly?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did a whole zine last year for Gen Con that talks about a lot of these issues specified for LARP, and we are actually trying to get that made as a digital printable version so you can have it, and that includes safety tools like an X sheet on the back so you can keep that guide with you.
Yeah, it's a little pocket guide about game consent. We designed it for the City of Glass LARP people to use, and they're going to continue to use it, which is cool.
Huzzah!
But there's also stuff in there that's good for just general TTRPGs and all that kind of shit. It's set up to be printable right now, but we're trying to also convert it into a scrollable PDF.
Yeah.
And so everybody can have all of the access to the things.
Huzzah!
Woo!
That'll be available publicly soon. We'll probably give it to the patrons first, but
hell yeah.
But we'll get to that later.
For sure. Big thing I wanted to note, this kind of gameplay style can range from wacky to deeply intense.
Mm-hmm.
You can be silly, I cast fireball and throw a beanbag, to some of the most gut-wrenching, just oh my god, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Those are
all actually screaming in character.
Actually screaming, actually crying.
Yeah.
Grieving the ghost of people that technically never actually existed, but because of the power of the theater of the mind, it in the moment it feels real for them.
Yeah.
So, there are lots of tropes that encourage players and storytellers to act out their characters through physical and emotional acting, so it's going to be a bit more intense. than a tabletop game.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the troop, extraordinarily more intense. Depends.
Some LARP have physical combat.
Yeah, some of them have, like, Dagahir shit.
Yeah.
Or the beanbag you mentioned.
Yeah, like the beanbag. Yeah.
I think I'd be more upset if I didn't understand what was going on and someone just in a fucking robe threw a beanbag at me and I didn't understand why than I would be if someone, like, came up and was screaming at me in a LARP.
Yeah.
So, again, it's good to know what you're getting into.
Good to know what you're getting into. And yeah, there's other people that have, common thing I've noticed in my limited interactions with LARPs is there's a lot of people that have trigger issues around men screaming specifically due to like their own personal traumas. So when some of the dudes that have particularly like commanding or deeper voices get really into character, it wigs those other people out. Mm-hmm. The guy screaming did nothing wrong, and the person who's upset is like, I know you've done nothing wrong, this is not your fault, but this is like fucked me up for the day, so
right.
And I'm like, okay, that friend needs
some extra hugs.
That friend needs some extra hugs, and making sure things are communicated as in a volume thing or not, or like there's a designated screaming area. I don't know. There's tons of ways to handle that depending on your game and troop and play style, but that's one I've run into a handful of times already that I'm just like, okay, yeah, this needs to be communicated and maybe calibrated a little bit better. While the physical and emotional acting can get rather method for some people really get fucking into this, like in ways where I'm like, are you Heath Ledger reincarnated? What happened? Holy shit. There still needs to be a separation between the game and the meat space, along with respect given to all parties involved, because doing a LARP takes a lot of fucking effort. It is any kind of big community organizing takes a lot of effort. So, managing your own bleed and helping to manage the bleed of others will help prevent there being issues so everybody can have a good time.
Yeah.
So, woo! So, communication and calibration during all of the things is good. So, talk to your friends. Being open builds trust and allows for others to support you when you need it. Because if you don't tell the homies you're sad, they're not going to know you're sad sometimes. And it's okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Use the tools you have agreed upon and pause, stop, take breaks as needed. You agreed upon these tools, you built them into the system from the beginning. Fucking actually use them, goddammit. Also, talk to yourself. Being self-aware is a skill. It can be worked on.
The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, just the like, oh, I'm bad at like regulating myself. I'm like, get good at it. Practice. Like, I don't have a nicer way to say that. Yeah, just, it's a thing you can work on. Introspection can lead to self-discovery on personal issues as well as allow you to potentially find better story beats to play out that don't cross your wires. Because sometimes sitting down going, okay, I'm playing this scene. It's making me have feelings. Why is this making me have feelings? Okay, it's making me have feelings because it's reminding me of X situation. Do I want to continue with this or do I want to play through with this? Do I want to use my personal experience to build upon the character, or has this gotten too real and I need to like dial it back? That's all valid. Do know your character is a simulation. It can be dropped or changed on your whims. Your character is not more important than your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have very minimal respect for it. It's my character would. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Change your character.
So yes, there's also those times that it's like, just check in with your friends. If you've made the situation, or if you have the game where this character's an asshole and they're going to be an asshole to the party, well, if the party knows, then that's one thing.
Yeah.
That's okay. We've been saying that the whole time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you and I play characters that are just antagonistic to each other frequently. Yeah. That's just our vibe.
We tend to just be antagonistic toward each other.
It's just a fun little mischievous thing to do.
Yeah.
When we're playing together, we're all just like, hey, go fuck yourself.
I didn't even mean in game.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, our friendship's a little like, hey, go fuck yourself. I'm like, go fuck you.
That's why I wasn't allowed to have the poppers at Bennett's house anymore.
Yeah,
because I kept
you couldn't
not
stop
the drugs, but the little snap it poppers.
You couldn't stop huffing. You couldn't. Yeah, you
not those ones.
You had to relax your perineum way too often. And
not those ones.
No. But yeah. I don't want to take away people's ideas and wanting to do a character, but I've never found merit in making or designing characters and insisting on sticking on them when it's something that is clearly upsetting you and or your friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I have very little patience for that shit. I'm fine with impassioned, like, no, this is what they would do because of da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, that's fine, but you also need to take the impassioned critique and maybe think about it.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, cool. As long as everybody's understanding.
I think we were all on the same page. I was just like, that sometimes this other case happens. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's always nuance and context with everything.
Everything is black and white. Like my shirt.
Yeah, and my shirt too. I'm also wearing a black and white striped mesh top, and then Skipper's wearing his little Pugsley shirt. We did not plan this, but somebody at the store when we were grabbing lunch was like, "Oh, twinsies," and I was like,
Shit.
Sure." Thanks, ma'am. So, wrapping up slowly. Note on Bleed and Playing for Bleed. Bloodstained Love on page 19 says, "Playing for Bleed is purposely playing in a way that maximizes bleed."
That seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, do note that this is page 19, right after page 18, the start of the bleed section. Playing for Bleed is a style that is more common in Nordic LARP spaces as opposed to the US and other gaming spaces that this podcast is more familiar with. The Nordic LARP style, shockingly, is from Scandinavian areas in Europe, and they do LARPs different. Weird.
Also, it's, from my understanding, we're starting to have more crossover and people looking into more, we'll say, Asian-based role-playing games. And I think it was Korea has a whole burgeoning new style of role-play. Where you buy a box set with a book, but Bleed is very inherent in why people play their games, which is interesting, and it's actually become the most popular hobby amongst women there.
I'm not surprised.
It's really interesting. I think People Make Games did a video on it. Really good channel.
Send me that.
But so it is more common outside of the US, not just Nordic.
Yeah, just Nordic LARP is the one we have had the most crossover with, and Nordic style LARP is what's being cited and pulled into World of Darkness. I understand a bunch of the staff is European, so they have that exposure and they're kind of bringing it over into this market, which is cool. There's lots of really great stuff in Nordic LARP. Here's my problem with this, though, friends. While I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the play style, this is something that is difficult to bring to the US game space along with spaces that are similar to ours, given that in our context, a lot of people have this mindset of playing to win. So this is, getting the high score on the board, you're having a good kill-death ratio, speed running, min-maxing. It's very Gordon Gekko, greed is good style gaming, where we get our serotonin from getting the Xbox achievements and blah blah blah. That's the gaming context most of us have come up in, and that's why things like D&D, your goal is to level up by getting XP by killing people, and the story is kind of the frame around you doing those actions. Not so much that the story is the main focus and then the actions let you facilitate the story, which is more what kind of World of Darkness is focused on. Mixing the mindset of playing for Bleed is unfun and potentially dangerous when you lack the moral maturity on both ends of this situation. So players that are not really understanding what they're getting into can cause harm to themselves and others and lead to bad and unfun experiences. So if you take people that are used to gaming in a certain way, and then you tell them that they are going to quote-unquote win the game by causing emotional damage and being messy without giving them the proper context and tools to regulate that shit,
that's gonna be bad.
That's gonna be bad. That's where the World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade horror stories come from.
Most, I would say.
Yeah, and a lot of people within the community have been working really hard to purge these people out or untrain that shit out of people. So having a officially published book kind of set people up for that again was very upsetting for a lot of people in the community, and they reacted that way publicly for that reason. They're just like, oh no.
I would go so far as to say if you're showing up to a LARP at all or a World of Darkness game in general, with the mindset of you're going to win the game, you're probably starting on a false foot to begin with.
I would say that's pretty true for any role-playing game.
Yeah,
even D&D, which is so combat focused and so we're gonna go do the thing. If you're trying to win the game as a player, that means that the other people at your table are not experiencing the game because you are trying to do all of it. If
you're trying to win over the other players, yes. I specifically stated World of Darkness and LARPs because D&D stuff, it tends to be very team-based and tactical, so you tend to be working together to get through this adventure, get through this dungeon. There's a lot more cooperation, but because World of Darkness and LARPs are so social, LARPs, there's just so many people that you are not going everyone that you could quote unquote beat is another person.
Yeah.
And a World of Darkness is tends to tell multiple stories, very personal stories. So winning implies the others are losing, where I think things like D&D and like Call of Cthulhu, you can all work together and solve a mystery or a puzzle and all win together. So I think that separates those two specifically out a little more.
Right. I guess I was thinking more like D&D, people still try to win the game, like min-maxers.
Yeah.
Usually those are people who are trying to win D&D, because it's, all right, well, I'm a fighter. I just did 300 damage to the dragon.
Yeah.
Where there's the mage over here who's like built their character for the fun of it. It's like, cool, well, I was not needed.
I summoned 8 squirrels.
Right. Yeah. And so like that person who is trying to win D&D by doing 300 damage in a turn and nuking the entire combat so no one else gets to do anything, they're winning D&D in their mind, but they're ruining the game for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, because like min-maxers like that get into main character syndrome. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I have games where I have people in my party who are min-maxers, but they min-max as part of the team.
Yeah.
Where they're like, okay, my role in the party is to do DPS.
Oh, I like doing that, too. Yeah,
so
if I'm playing a rogue, I'm like, no one will see me. I can't do anything else, but no one will see me when I'm doing it.
So, they built the character where it's like, they are fucking people up with, like, a spike chain, and they've, like, added in alchemists. They're using alchemy to get long arms so the reach for their chains is even longer. Like, it's bananas, but their will score is shit.
Yeah.
And that kind of balances out with other people in the party like me, who's like the buff debuff person and just constantly giving people rerolls. Mm-hmm. So we kind of like
even out.
Yeah, you can do min-maxing in a way that is cooperative and team-based as opposed to main character syndrome.
Yeah.
I would argue that that's like almost its own separate issue. Mm-hmm. I think I totally agree with what you're saying, but closer to what I'm trying to say though is like the goal of especially LARPs in most World of Darkness is you're coming together to tell a story, and the telling of the story is the game itself. Mm-hmm. So winning is you win by having a good time, enjoying the experience, where where board games and a lot of D&D and stuff have a end goal that you are working to. We hit this thing, the game is over, you've won. There is a story involved, but like I'm running Candlekeep Adventures for D&D. Our group goal is to beat the final mission in this book that I say I'm running for you. Yeah. Whereas in Vampire, it's like, we're telling a little story in Chicago, and I have some characters you're going to interact with, and you guys pick your goals.
Yeah. You tell me what you want to do, and I will facilitate NPCs and events around.
Right. And that'll change as you guys do things.
Yeah.
So that was more what I was getting at. So if you show up to a LARP and you're like, I'm going to beat the boss and we're going to complete the challenge, that's not what's happening here most of the time.
Kind of ending that, and with the issue with play for bleed, if you're going into I'm playing for bleed, and that is my understanding of the WinCon. Going into that kind of situation is setting yourself up to be in either very highly intense, emotionally elating or devastating situations, which for you could be fun. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's stuff that the other people in the troop wanted to fucking engage with, and you are being dramatique in a way that is ruining the fun for everybody else and makes you a fucking asshole. Or your bleed and issues are getting so intense, you're getting your wires crossed and you're not able to differentiate your in-character feelings from the meat space feelings, and now you're making everyone feel weird at the after party, which has now made this unfun. So, and or dangerous, depending on how squirrely that particular person can go.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's where that is. And then on the storyteller side of that, storytellers not communicating or regulating the gameplay experience, which leaves prepared players open for harm from unprepared players and vice versa. So if you're running a game that is going to be we're playing for bleed, we want to be messy bitches, we want to have emotional damage, if you do not set up proper safety tools and consent and like ratings to let people know, hey, this is what this game is, this is what this play style is, and here's all of our safety tools for handling things, and here's how we're going to regulate if things get out of hand, because they're fucking going to, you're setting your players up to get fucked up. Like, you're going to ruin friendships, you're going to make people feel unsafe and unwelcome in the space, you're going to potentially expose players to
actual violent things, or even like soft violence where they're getting like emotionally or mentally manipulated by other players
in things in ways that they aren't expecting. And there's like issues with soft power and hard power. And, you know, people who are experienced are able to like bully and corral people who don't know what they're doing. And those people will think, oh, this is just part of the game because we're quote unquote playing for bleed. And they don't realize they're being abused. Like this can get super fucked up so fucking fast. And yeah, which is the other side of why the community was like, whoa, pump the brakes there, cowboy.
Yeah.
So I would say at least currently in the US-centric gaming market, because that's where I'm most experienced at, we as a community do not have the skills to be really fucking with playing for bleed willy-nilly.
I would say if you want to play for bleed, you should probably keep it to like your friend group. For people that you know and you have those like relationship with and you already know those lines and you're comfortable with each other and you feel safe with each other. I would say if you want to try that kind of thing out, stick to that. Don't just be like, all right, we're starting a LARP.
Yeah, if you...
Because you don't know who's going to be there. You don't know how, like, they're going to handle it.
You could have a LARP where there's, like, a vetting process and, like, a day set aside where it's like, hey, we're going to take an hour in this afternoon where we're going to go through what is bleed, what is playing for bleed, what our expectations are, da-da-da-da-da-da.
I guess what I was saying, if you and
can't
your
just throw it together.
And your group of friends are like, I've always wanted to try it.
Yeah.
Don't just throw it together. Just do it with your friends for a couple sessions to see how you like it first. Yeah,
and I also can't imagine throwing together a playing for bleed actual play game, because then it's like, okay, not only do you have the dangers of emotional manipulation and abuse and harm,
but it's public.
It's public, so now the internet is watching it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's bananas. Like, I'm not saying don't do a play for bleed style game, because, you know, bitches love a messy game and a story. I know I do. But I would be horrified to know if an actual play that did play for bleed didn't have proper safety tools and was like harming the actors involved. Because essentially when you're doing an actual play, you're an actor.
Yeah.
And because it's the same way I feel when people do sex scenes in films and they don't have intimacy coordinators. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have somebody there to be like, whoa, is everybody good? Are you feeling comfortable? Do you feel safe? Do you need to talk to somebody? We can like clear the room.
Yeah.
Like we're not in a space now where we can just kind of like cowboy our way through this shit anymore, because that's just that's not acceptable. Yeah. So Sarah's hot take is I find it morally dubious, particularly given the unethical content stuff we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Hey guys, I'm bringing it around full circle.
Yay.
I personally find it morally dubious that a bleed section that is officially published in an official book has such a strong upfront focus on this type of playstyle, given the widely understood issues within our community and market. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with playing for bleed. Like, bitch, I've done it.
Right.
But I've done it in, like, little games with friends where we all knew what the fuck we were getting into and knew how to not make it weird. And if it got too intense for me, I would just fucking say it, or I would just, be like, okay, I'm just gonna take a day to process this and move the fuck on.
Right.
And it's like, God. But yeah, the section overall, I really wish was written to be more of an instruction manual, and that's kind of not how it's written. They kind of keep bouncing between topics and ideas, and it needs to be written very brass tacks, like, this is what this is what we're defining the terms as, this is what can happen, here's why this is important. And it's not that those things aren't in the book, but it's like in a section later on, and it's just kind of mixed in with some other shit, and it drives me insane because there is actually good information in the bleed section specifically, but it's overshadowed by this. It feels like authorial excitement to get to the explaining what playing for bleed is to a new audience, and they're just like, I want people to engage with this, and they're gonna put it right up in the very front, and I'm like, what the fuck? It's kind of like somebody who's really excited about kink, and they're getting into the deep end of like really advanced shibari shit up front, and they're not explaining like basic like red, yellow, green. So it's like, you're not even explaining like the safety tools. You're just like, the safety tools exist in this other section, and I'm like, I know you guys are trying to save on printing paper and costs, and I respect that.
Right. But
you need to be a little bit more upfront and be like, you need to read this section.
Yeah.
This is serious.
It needs to happen.
This needs to happen. So that's kind of my thing. There's good advice. It's just unfortunately buried under when you're like, I'm excited to do this thing. Let's go. Woo. And it's like, cool, but I don't know how to do this. And you're kind of setting up new players for failure. So I can't in good consciousness give newer players and storytellers that bleed section and tell them to go. That needs some fucking context, which I'm going to provide for you. So if this episode was not enough context for you and you want further information, there is the video Bleed, How Emotions Affect Role-Playing Experiences by Sarah Lynn Bowman. It is on YouTube. It's like an 11, 12-minute video. It's a good little lecture. Mm-hmm. And then if you want a reading, if you don't want to listen to the video, or if you want like further context on Bleed and how to handle it, there is a Seattle by Night mods written guide called What is Bleed. It is an article in Medium that was written for like their Discord roleplay. But it is such a good guide on just like what Bleed is, how it affects things, how to handle it, and like different calibration options.
Cool.
So those two sources are super good. I think those two in conjunction with the Bleed section in Bloodstained Love should get you where you need to go without causing mental scars and ruined friendships.
Yeah, I don't think you should read just what's in Bloodstained Love and the Vampire Core book and think, I'm ready to do this, as far as playing for Bleed, acknowledging and knowing about Bleed. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't think it's definitely not a complete guide.
No.
The other one I was going to recommend, it's a video I mentioned earlier. I had my wires crossed because I was watching a video about North Korean history last night. Okay. But it is actually, the video is called The Murder Game Revolution that has gripped China, and it's by People Make Games. It's really interesting. And I will say, they talk a lot about these issues because it's an issue that they're having to discuss now. They actually, bit of a spoiler, they recorded a live play of one of the few of these games that has been translated to English at the point of recording, only for them to get towards the end and there be an expectation to act out an assault scene. And so they scrapped the entire game and did not release it. Because they invited other YouTubers to play this game with them, and then
went,
that just happens, and they had to say, I'm sorry, we're done.
Yeah.
So...
Damn. Okay, I'm here for this roller coaster.
It's an interesting video that is a topic that is discussed, but it is for them like kind of a brand new art. But it's interesting. The biggest TV show in China right now is based off of these murder games. I feel like it's an older fad that I've mostly seen in older pop culture, but like the murder mystery dinner nights and things like that. This is kind of like an extension of that idea taken to like, imagine you need a book the size of a D&D core book to get through a murder mystery night. They could go for, some of them last a whole day, some of them last multiple days. Like they're big events. It's a really cool, and it is right on the border between LARP and roleplay. It's really, there's an entire like fake city built around one specific game that people play. It's crazy. Give that video a watch.
Hell yeah.
But that also gets into a community that probably is handling it worse than America, at least right now. So.
I'm shocked. Because usually we're good at fucking shit up, USA.
Oh.
Alright, so final thoughts on unethical content and Bleed.
I love unethical content in games.
Fuck yeah.
It's so fun in games.
It's just about knowing your players and knowing what's cool and what's going to vibe. And sometimes you don't find out till it's happening. And that's why we talk about it. We've done so many consent episodes. I feel like it's hard to add too much to that section. And as far as Bleed goes, I've never played specifically for it, but I've experienced it. I just guess I didn't have a word for it. I thought, always kind of considered it inherent to the act of role playing. It's hard to step into the shoes of another person and not feel some of the feelings they have, or the feelings that you would have even if they wouldn't in their shoes. So it is an interesting topic to dive more deeply into and discuss. I know we're probably it's going to keep coming up the rest of this month, so.
Yeah. Hell yeah, fuck month.
I would say about the same.
Yeah.
As Hunter here.
Yeah.
Unethical content's fun.
It is super fun. It's like kind of my jam.
Yeah, and Bleed isn't necessarily bad. In fact, I feel like most of the campaigns that I've had, I have experienced a bit of Bleed, being like, whether it's man, that was so much fun, and I'm like high on it for a couple days.
Yeah.
You know, or there have happened thing in game that I was just like, that is so tragic for that character. And then when I think about it later, I go, oh man, I'm sad about that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that means we told a really fucking good story.
Yeah.
As long as everybody else is cool with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Fuck yeah, concrete.
Concrete.
Cement, that's concrete, baby.
Concrete.
I think we're out of things to say. So thank you, Paralyze.
Tired.
Yeah, thank you, Paralyze, for the muzak.
Yeah.
They're on Bandcamp. Go check them out. Give them some dollary dues. They're cool.
Go check out How's Other Band World I Hate if you haven't yet. They are also really good.
They slap.
We are on Instagram at Blank Bodies Pod. I can't even say our name today. We are on TikTok at Blank Bodies Podcast. And as I mentioned earlier, we got a Patreon. There's a ton of tiers. You can get everything from art drawn by Sarah to Discord titles to a special Discord chat. You get a monthly Patreon episode that you guys vote on, and then I run wild with the topic. The new one poll ended, and I believe that this month for the Patreon, we're going to be talking about The Quiet Year and running that for Vampire. So that'll be fun.
Hell yeah.
If you liked our we also did a microscope series. I really like building settings and finding new ways to do that.
Yeah.
And it seems like you guys do too. So we'll definitely be fun on that one. I wonder if this will have too much fun and end up doing bonus episodes on this like last time. Who knows?
Hey,
but
it happens, and that's fine.
We also do clan polls, and because of the clan polls, that's why after we finish Romance Month, we have the Ministry Month.
The Satites rebranded, born again.
It's interesting. They're one of the ones I know the least about. So
death is only the beginning.
They're kind of their goal is to kind of just like take over Toreador's spot as most horny. I think that's just the Ministry's goal.
I thought they were a silly snake.
Oh god, that meme will never die.
It cannot die.
Cannot. But
the
yeah,
eternal snake.
If you appreciate the work that we do, we appreciate your dollar dues. We do still have the Patreon goal of we get to $500 a month. We'll be doing 4 regular episodes a month after that, and I will be doing the Cursed Milk in World of Darkness episode.
Yeah.
We did corn, now we're doing milk. We're just going to get less hinged over time.
This episode was definitely essential, but I think the next 2 are going to be a little lighter too. So
yeah, yes and no. Yes, consequences. Yeah, basically, fuck month is fuck around and then find out. That is the kind of the theme we were going with.
See, I thought it seems like we found out and now we're going to go fuck around.
Well, we prepared. This is preparing to fuck around.
Okay. So this was like session 0, and next week we fuck around and then we find out?
Yes.
Oh, fun.
Cool, so I got 2 weeks to keep fucking around before I have to find out.
Exactly. Let's go.
We're done.
Yep. Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.